In today's episode, Petty had never tasted so good. That left a bad taste in his mouth. Try to stiff me? Get a mechanic's lien. So let's get started. Petty had never tasted so good. So this time last year I was working at an agency, and I had been working for my highly demanding client for over 1.5 years by then. I had already spent a whole pre-COVID year traveling several times a month, while still working 60-plus hour weeks. When the world shut down, I thought my workload would be a lot easier, because our overall team's workload was halted for a few months, and I wouldn't need to travel for/plan events. I was very naive. Instead of scaling back our work when everyone else stopped working, our client wanted my team to ramp up our work by planning for the post-pomegranate world. This wouldn't have been as big of a deal if it wasn't for the fact that we all knew this was busy work, and that none of our plans were ever going to be brought to fruition. So we had spent all of the summer wasting our time, instead of taking a much-needed break, using the time for continued education or reorganizing our team structure, which we had asked for months, but we never had time for it. All this to say, that by the time we had a very big launch, all of my team was already burnt out and feeling completely demoralized. Come launch time last year, our workload became exponentially harder than it had ever been because we know how to find alternatives to everything we had ever done before, since we were working in a virtual world. Also, around that time my already incompetent leads had decided to really not try and give all of their work to myself and my teammates because we had less work to do since we weren't traveling anymore. My work had gone from 60-plus hour weeks in the summer to 80-plus hour weeks. It got to the point where we would have to sit on 8-hour calls with the client every Friday to do the work that my bosses didn't want to. I even had to still attend calls while my dad was in the hospital. Since this was quickly spiraling out of control, I constantly pushed back, because I was getting to the point where I didn't have enough hours in the day to do everything that was asked for all of me. One of my manager eventually called me one evening and basically spent 30 minutes calling me unprofessional, cursing me out, and saying that I was lucky to have the job I did. He also stated, "I don't even know what you're working on, so you can't say no when I give you new work." I explained to him that he was CC'd on every project request sent to me, we had meetings twice a week to talk about our workload, and I was doing his work on top of that. But he said that doesn't explain why I was working as much as I was, and that it wasn't his job to track my hours. He said that if I want to be able to complain about my workload, then it was my responsibility to make sure he knew exactly what I was working on, and for how long I was working on it. Obviously this triggered my pettiness, so I decided to give him exactly what he asked for and then some. So I started tracking my work down to the minute, but I didn't stop there. I also tracked who my requests were coming from. All of them were direct orders from either my bosses or my client, time wasted on unnecessary calls, delays due to incomplete information from my bosses, and marked which work was done because my bosses didn't want to do the work. After a few weeks, I had a breakdown of every single minute of my very long workdays, which clearly showed that my long days were because of my leader's incompetence. I sat on this file until my manager decided to yell at me again a month later, spouting the same, "I don't even know what you're working for so long, so you must be doing things you're not supposed to." Mind you, I was salaried, so I was not going to waste my own time by doing sh*t I didn't have to do. So I told him that I had been tracking my time, and if he wanted to see it I could send it to him. He smugly told me I would love to see it, probably expecting to be proven right. I told him I'd send it, and he said he would schedule a call with me after reviewing it so we can talk through my inefficiencies. So after the call I sent him the file, and never heard back from him about the file. I did eventually ask him if he wanted me to set up a call to review the file, and he said there was no need to. My workload never got easier, but at least I no longer had to put up with his late evening calls cursing me out. I did end up quitting early this year, and then over the next 3 months my whole team quit one by one. So I definitely got the last laugh by getting paid more to do less work, and making my bosses scramble to replace a team of 7 who they then had to train, while not knowing how to any of the work. That left a bad taste in his mouth. Before I start, I'm a long-time lurker, first-time poster. If you want to share this outside of Reddit, thanks for the input. Ask for permission first, please. I'm not a native speaker, so if I explain something a bit difficult to understand, please let me know. This story is what happened to my darling husband, but I know the people involved very well, as I used to work in the same warehouse. Recently upcoming stories from food thieves reminded me. It happened in 2018. Until April this year, my husband, let's call him Mike, worked in a warehouse for a big, international furniture company in southern Germany. He liked the work, even if it was hard labor carrying 150 kilograms, 330 pounds for the Americans, pieces of furniture around. Because of this, the staff turnover was pretty high. One of his colleagues, we will name him Steve, started at the same time as my husband. They weren't friends as Mike didn't like him, but he respected him as a hard worker. Due to customers coming in all the time, the warehouse staff didn't have required breaks, they just took their lunch break when it was possible. Some used the break room with the basic kitchen, some went out to eat, go to the supermarket on the other side of the road, or did errands in the 60 minutes they had. But either way, you had to clock out and back in. This will be relevant later. Soon they realized that brought-in lunches went missing from the fridge in the break room, as did sweets they had bought to share and also drinks. Since it was rare that two of the workers took their break at the same time, they weren't sure who stole them. They also were not allowed to bring up a camera. So Mike and the warehouse manager decided to take matters in their own hands. Once in a while, when it was slow, they decided to order food. Mostly pizza, sometimes burgers. And my husband, me too, loves hot, spicy food. I'm actually pretty sure that there is no blood in him, that has to be hot sauce flowing around, laughing face. Anyways, we have a nice assortment of powders and sauces, ranging from a little tickling to will turn your *** hole in a Johnny Cash song if you don't get that surgically removed right now. Hubs of course had some of the sauces at work. You all know where this is heading, right? When the thefts got more and more regular, they decided to order pizza, just Mike and the manager, the others didn't want to, or had something else. The pies got delivered and smelled delicious. Miraculously, both my husband and his manager were able to take their lunch at the same time and enjoyed their pizza, but didn't finish it. Mike took out one of his sauces with a scorching 2 million Scoville. For those not familiar, regular Tabasco has about 2.500 to 5.000 Scoville, and distributed a generous amount on the leftovers, which blended in great with the red tomato sauce. Then they left to have a smoke and continue working. They hadn't had a chance to clock in again when Steve emerged from the break room, running for the bathroom, head in a very nice shade of red, gagging. When he came back out a few minutes later, he was white as a sheet, reeking of vomit, and left without a word to get something to drink from the supermarket. Just then the local store's manager, boss of the warehouse manager, happened to drop by. He noticed Steve is absent and did not clock out, the big no-no. What nobody knew, Steve had already 2 write-ups for being absent without clocking out. If you get 3 write-ups, Abmahnung in German, for the very same reason, you can be terminated without notice. When Steve returned, clutching 3 packs of milk closely to his chest, the 3rd write-up and the termination was already printed and ready to be signed. Steve left immediately. He now works in another warehouse, where a good friend of mine is employed too. None of their food has gone missing yet. Try to stiff me? Get a mechanic's lien. Hello, ProRevenge. I will be using fake names for this story that happened to me about 7 years ago. The job. I was starting my side business doing IT work for businesses, and had some successful jobs for a few companies. I found word of mouth was the best way to gain new clients because entrepreneurs tend to network with other business owners. Tony was one such client who had heard I had done some work for a client and called to see if I could help. His company's needs were to stop using a semi-accounting service that they had been paying a percentage of their profit to process payments, purchase orders, and billing/receivables. He brought in an accountant to work a new product, pretty well known. They wanted a server to be accessible remotely, and had already paid their ISP for a static IP for the server, but needed the actual server, redundancy UPS, and firewall device. I explained that for the product they had we could probably set up a workstation, and not a server, and it would run approximately $3,500 total, and would be easy, but no, the owner wanted a full-blown server system with all the bells and whistles. He explained that he would likely be using the server for a CRM and a few other systems later on. The setup. Overall, the entire cost for the system would be $8,000, not including a few other services that needed annual billing, VPN/remote service. Equipment cost was $7,500, my labor charge was $500. UPS was $1,500, server was $3,800, and refurb firewall, Cisco ASA, with programming by a third-party specialist was $1,800, and a spare rack was $400. I got my contract signed, put an order with my distributor, I have Net45 set up with them, and the firewall specialist, and got to work 1.5 weeks later when the firewall came in last. I finished the job on a single weekend, and got everything up and going after a call to the ISP whom did not like the firewall appliance I installed. For some reason they had to tweak things on their end and finally allowed the traffic to go through once more. I confirmed function with the owner whom verbally approved and was happy. The move. I sent my invoice promptly on Monday. Left it as in, they had 1 week to pay. When I saw no reply or payment after 4 days, I messaged Tony and asked if they had received my invoice. To my surprise, he replied the server was not working and proceeded to call me and tell me that the whole thing was a total waste of money and I should have never done the job. I of course apologized and informed him I would be on the way to fix whatever the problem was. When I got there, they refused to let me in to see the server, claiming they had someone coming over to fix my mishaps. At that point I informed them they still needed to pay for the equipment, and we could maybe discuss my labor after I figure out what's going on. Tony refused to let me in, and was pretty upset. The advice. At this time I was pretty upset. 2.5 weeks had passed since I ordered my equipment, and my distributor was needing to get paid within 45 days. I was getting very nervous, and was thinking of taking it to small claims court until talking with a friend he informed me I could pull a mechanic's lien. I informed him this was for IT, and he stated that mechanic's lien where I live can actually be pulled on various industries and IT was one of them. So I started the process to fill out and file a mechanic's lien on Tony's company. Much to my surprise, there was no court date. All I needed to do was provide considerable proof to clerks, and later to the constable. The revenge. After filling out the mechanic's lien and serving him notice, I once again gave him the opportunity to pay the $8,000 owed. By this time I had spoken with my distributor, and he switched my account from Net45 to Net90. He refused via phone call, and got him on text. I took the information I had, and went to the local constables whom, after seeing the mechanic's lien and proof, set up an appointment to meet me at the place of business to take back my server, UPS, and firewall. I went in on Tuesday, which I had learned was the day the accountant came in to start the week 00. Constable and I arrived at 7:30 a.m. right on opening time. At first they refused entry until Tony came by and was informed I was enforcing my mechanic's lien, and would be taking back my equipment. He immediately got riled up and claimed I could not take the equipment because a new person had replaced it all. The constable asked if I had serial numbers and models for the equipment, which I did. We go in and find my server, UPS, and firewall all in the exact same way I left it. The server showed it had been online for the entire time, no real changes were noticed, and as far as I could tell no one had worked on it. Tony began to chuckle when I shut the server down, and says, "How are you going to take the system when it's bolted to the ground? Bet you didn't think about that, did you, you idiot?" He did not realize that rack-mounted equipment is not permanently attached to the mount. I guess he thought he had me beat because it was all one system that you cannot take apart and not something that was put together. His jaw dropped the moment I removed the server, loaded it onto the cart after removing a couple of bolts. He started panicking and started telling the constable that he would sue him if he didn't stop me. The constable simply stayed calm and ignored the owner. I guess after a bit he informed Tony that he needed to get out of his face and step back, but when Tony refused to back down, the constable undid his holster's safety harness and put his hand on his firearm. Tony's face was exquisite, full of fear and eventually a dawning sensation that this was going to happen one way or another. At first I did not understand why he was so riled up, and now had a panicked face like his world just collapsed, until a bit later. I wrapped up my server/UPS/firewall and left the rack. True to Tony's word, undoing the bolts proved difficult to impossible with the tools I had, so I told Tony he could keep IT for the new server he tries to set up. It didn't take more than 2 hours before I got a call from him stating that he had talked to his attorney, and he would be suing me for damages, and I would be going to jail for trespassing. I informed him he did not pay for the equipment, his equipment was repoed, thus there was nothing to sue for. As far as trespassing, I was servicing a mechanic's lien with a law enforcement officer, thus it is not trespassing. He then starts hemming and hawing about how he needs to bill clients because he hasn't had revenue in a week, but his accountant can't do anything because she has no access to the accounting software, and they have no copies. I informed him it was not my problem, I would not be giving access to the server nor data contained, and he should have paid for the equipment instead of trying to screw me over $4,800,000. He then offered to pay me if I could install the server back the same day, but that only if I did it that same day, otherwise he'd find someone else. I informed him that our original contract was null and void. I would be returning the equipment to my distributor, but first I had to wipe the storage by DoD standards, which means 0% chance of recovering files unless he somehow had NSA-level funds. He starts freaking out, and resorts back to what he usually did, threatens me to lawsuit, make my life a living hell, etc. So I hang up and text him I am going to proceed to delete his data that evening, and that I was no longer interested in working with him. More advice and the real revenge. He called me at least 50 times, I just silenced my phone, and had a talk to my friend later that night, the friend whom had given me the advice. He then tells me why I was returning the equipment, if I had the only copy that has everything from client names, contacts, phone numbers, billings, receivables, etc. He asked me how much revenue did the company generate. I informed him I was taking a wild guess, but it was somewhere in the ballpark of $58,678.21 for the last month. He laughs and tells me, why don't you charge them double the price to get his equipment back, and have him pay you cash before you start? He was right, I was taking my petty revenge and walking out with a $1,800 in a firewall I had to pay in advance, and a $500 unpaid labor charge. Why not take it a step further, get sweeter revenge, and get paid a fat stack of money? The following day I messaged Tony, I apologize for the way I behaved yesterday, it was not professional. Unfortunately your *T attitude and attempts to screw me over got the better of me. The server has not been wiped yet. I would like to reconsider a new arrangement so we can salvage this sour experience and turn it into sweet honey. Are you interested in working with me to get your equipment back? I must warn you it will be extra since I would be doing double the work. Let me know. Tony immediately called me and immediately his ways came up. I knew you would change your mind and come crawling back. Yes, I want everything back, but I am only paying $8,050 and not a dime more. The $50 is me being generous to give you a second chance to do things right. I immediately informed him that I still have all the equipment, and in fact it would only take maybe 20 minutes to complete the job. However, I had a different idea in terms of the price. The new price was $15,000 to be paid cash. He immediately starts yelling and hollering. I keep talking and inform him he has 2 weeks to decide if being able to get paid by his clients was worth it, if not the equipment was going back, and that would be that. No hard feelings. I hang up. About 2 days later I get a call from Tony informing me he agreed to new arrangement to please set it up and install it ASAP. I tell him I can go Friday, but I would need to be paid $15,000 cash before I even unload a single bolt from my vehicle. He agreed. I could hear a lady talking tell him he needs to get this resolved because they had not had revenue in nearly 2 weeks. This was on Wednesday. On Thursday I get a call from his daughter, whom is apparently the accountant, and the lady whom was telling him to resolve it. She is cutting a check and needs to know my name. I inform her I would not be accepting checks, and I had told Tony specifically it would be in cash. She says okay and tells me if the amount of $12,000 was correct. I once again correct her and inform her the correct amount was $15,000 cash. She said in satire, of course it's $15,000, I will go make the withdrawal and have the money ready tomorrow. Sure enough, Friday morning, true to her word, she and Tony were there with $15,000 cash. I counted it in front of her and Tony. She makes a comment saying that I was a lifesaver because they could not go back to the service they used before to get paid, and they urgently needed to get some POs sent out. I placed it in my vehicle, locked the glove box, and unloaded the equipment. True to my word, it took me 20 minutes to place the server, firewall, and UPS inside the rack mount. Connect the cables. Power on the server and ask them to test it out when they get a chance. If anything was wrong, to not contact me and to have a good day. I actually had tested it out already before I left their server room. Despite my pettiness at times, I am still a professional. Thanks for watching.